The room carried the sterile scent of hotel soap, mingled faintly with rain. Morning light spilled through the towering windows, casting golden streaks across tangled white sheets. Meyer Ellis sat up slowly, her body sore, her heart a tight knot of emotions. The silence wrapped around her like a blanket, amplifying the hum of her thoughts. Beside her, the man still slept, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with dreams she'd never know. His face was turned away. She hadn't seen him clearly the night before, barely a glimpse in the dim light. She didn't know his name, and yet she remembered the desperation in his voice, the tremble in his hands, how she had felt something like peace in the middle of a storm. Shivering, Maya slipped out of bed, her bare feet hitting cold marble. She grabbed her crumpled dress from the nearby chair and slipped it on, not bothering with the mirror. Her hair hung in damp strands, and her eyes still bore the puffiness of tears long dried. Leaving something behind. On the nightstand, she found a notepad and pen. She stared at the blank page, unsure what to say. Apologies felt hollow. Gratitude seemed strange. Instead, she wrote what came from her gut. I don't know who you are, but thank you for not making me feel like I was nothing. She tore the page gently, laid it beside his arm, then unclasped the silver chain from her neck. A gift from her mother. Before the accident, she hadn't taken it off in 5 years. Until now, placing it next to the note felt like leaving behind a part of her cell phone that belonged to last night. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. He hadn't moved, his arm stretched loosely across the sheets, fingers curled. Meyer shut her eyes. She didn't cry. Not now. Last night hadn't been romantic. It hadn't been planned. But it hadn't been cruel either. It had been real. The walk of return, the hallway outside, was silent. Her heels echoed softly, an unwelcome soundtrack. The elevator dinged, hollow and metallic. No one watched. No one cared. In the lobby, only a man with a newspaper and a bored concierge noted her exit. Outside, the wind was sharp. It slapped her cheeks, cold and bracing. Meyer Ellis, 19. That night hadn't been about giving up. It had been about taking back something no one could steal again. Control. She walked into the city's noise, her silhouette swallowed by morning light. The girl who stayed invisible. Back in Brooklyn Heights, Maya's life was composed of sharp corners and soft silences. After her parents died in a crash when she was 14, she was sent to live with Margot Ellisharant, a woman who ran a tight household of Pilates, real estate listings, and wine nights. Margot wasn't cruel, just indifferent. Meyer became a shadow in her aunt's 2-story townhouse. Hand-me-down clothes, microwave dinners, and muted expectations were the cornerstones of her world. Her only sanctuary, the tiny bedroom upstairs. There, Maya drew endlessly. Rooms, spaces, textures, dreams in graphite. Her goal, to be an interior designer Samine who could build places that felt like home. Places unlike the ones she'd lived in. Enter Sierra Vaughn. At the New York Institute of Design, Maya stayed quiet. She worked part-time at a local cafe, barely made rent, and smiled when she didn't want to. Then came Sierra Vaughn, confident, loud, golden hair, red lipstick, and parents with bottomless bank accounts. Sierra had swooped in and declared Maya her project. Makeovers, parties, selfies. Maya had never had a sister, and Sierra played the part well until she didn't. Because Sierra had a secret weapon, jealousy. It started when Carter Sierra's on and off boyfriends drunkenly muttered that Maya was quietly beautiful. Just a passing comment. But Sierra heard, and Sierra never forgot. The party that changed everything. On the week of Maya's birthday, Sierra insisted on throwing a huge party at the Midtown Grand Hotel. You deserve something big, Sierra had said with a sugar-sweet smile. This will be unforgettable. Maya had hesitated. She didn't like crowds. She didn't like attention. But she had nodded anyway. The suite was crowded. Laughter, clinking glasses, tight dresses, too loud music. Sierra handed her a drink pink and sparkling. Maya sipped it slowly. It tasted off, sweet at first, bitter later. Then came the spinning, the blurring, the drowning silence inside her head, a collision in the hallway. She stumbled from the suite, phone shaking in her hand. The screen was unreadable. Panic set in. She needed out. Down the hallway, an elevator opened. She ran and collided with him. He was falling to slumped against the wall, breathing hard, eyes dazed. I need a room, he mumbled. Meyer saw it in his eyes. The same fear, the same chaos. They moved together, unintentionally synchronized, into a room, into survival. Two broken souls. Neither knew what was happening, not entirely, but they weren't running from each other. I was drugged, he whispered, collapsed on the floor. Someone tried to set me up. Meyer didn't flinch. You don't have to explain, she said. I'm running too. No names, no labels. Just strangers trying to claim something real in a night meant to ruin them both. They reached for each other not for lust, but for something far more human. Vulnerability, comfort, control. Their bodies met like waves. Unsure but honest. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't nothing. It was theirs. The echo of that night never left her. Meyer Alice went home, not to a place of comfort, but to a house of routines and silence. Margot didn't ask where she'd been. She rarely did. There was no warmth waiting, only a cold stare when Maya walked through the door. I was with a friend, Maya mumbled. Margot didn't respond. She poured a glass of wine and returned to her laptop. Maya climbed the stairs to her tiny room, shut the door, and let her body collapse onto the bed. Her skin still tingled from the stranger's touch. Her mind a war zone of questions. Who was he? Would she ever see him again? Did he even care? But mostly, she just remembered how he had looked at her like she wasn't broken. The rumors began. By Sunday, the whispers had begun. A grainy hotel surveillance clip had surfaced on campus forums. It wasn't explicit, just Meyer, stumbling out of the elevator, her dress askew, eyes glassy, clearly disoriented. It was enough. Ever the drunk. She couldn't handle a party. Did you see the video? Sierra didn't speak to her, not a single word. She vanished for days, and when she did return, she looked straight through Meyer as if she didn't exist. That's when Maya knew. The drink, the hotel, the setup, it hadn't been an accident. It was all planned. The man behind the curtain, across the city, Julian Blackwell, stared at a laptop screen, hunched in the backseat of a black SUV. His assistant, Mitchell, clicked through hotel security footage frame by frame. There, Julian pointed suddenly. Stop, go back. A blur. Then a girl, messy hair, twisted dress. For a split second, she looked directly into the camera, eyes wide, haunted. Julian leaned forward. That's her, he said. Mitchell nodded. Running image matching software now. Julian didn't know why it mattered, why this stranger had burrowed into his mind and refused to leave. But he remembered the moment clearly, her touch, her voice, the tremble in her fingers as she whispered, "You're safe now." He had been drowning. She pulled him back, unraveling the past. Maya sat in her room, sketchbook open on her lap, blank. Nothing came. For days, she hadn't been able to draw. The part of her that used to dream in lines and light had gone numb. She looked at the empty chain round her neck and felt the space it left behind. A space that hadn't closed since the moment she walked away from that hotel room. Maybe he had already forgotten her. Maybe he woke up and threw the chain away. Or maybe Julian's truth. Julian hadn't meant to be at that party. In fact, he'd spent most of his life avoiding them. Toe's glassy affairs filled with people who smelled too wide and asked for too much. But that night had been a trap. 6 months earlier, his father died, leaving Julian as the new face of Blackwell Innovations' billion-dollar legacy he didn't ask for. His uncle, Gregory Blackwell, had waited patiently for this moment. The party was Gregory's move, a gathering of influencers and investors, a chance to drug Julian, catch him on camera, and use the scandal to steal the company from under him. And it almost worked, until Maya stumbled into him, until she made a choice neither of them fully understood. Pieces of the puzzle. From his Manhattan penthouse, Julian pored over the data, security footage, background checks, school enrollment. Her name, Meyer Ellis. Age, 19. School, New York Institute of Design. No social media presence outside of school. No criminal record. Just a ghost. And yet, the imprint she'd left on him was undeniable. He had never trusted anyone that fast in his entire life. But when she knelt in front of him that night, placed her hands on his face, and simply said, "I don't care who you are, I'm running too," something cracked open, and he couldn't forget her. Maya's new life. The rumors faded, but the damage was done. The school placed her on academic suspension pending investigation into her conduct. There was no proof, no charges, just speculation. Margot was livid not because she cared about Maya's feelings, but because it embarrassed her socially. So Maya packed a single duffel bag, left the townhouse, and never looked back. She found a spot in a women's hostel on the Lower East Side. Small, noisy, but safe. She got a job at a local diner. Long shifts, tired feet, silence. Her sketchbook stayed in her bag, untouched, until the reunion. One night, after a late shift, Maya stepped outside. The cold hit her immediately, wind biting against her jacket, and there he was, across the street, standing under a street lamp, wearing a long dark coat, his eyes fixed on her. Julian. Their eyes locked. Maya froze. Her heart thundered. She crossed the street, cautious. Her voice barely came out. "You?" He nodded. "Me." They stood inches apart, the noise of the city falling away. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I never stopped looking." "Why?" He hesitated. Then, "Because I wasn't supposed to survive that night, but I did, because of you." Maya blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He stepped closer. "You gave me something real when everything around me was fake. You made me feel human again." Her throat tightened. It was just one night that changed everything. She looked away. "My life fell apart after that. So did mine. Maybe it was meant to." She looked up then, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel something more than fear. Hope. Building again. He walked her home that night. No touching, no rush, just presence. At the hostel door, Julian stopped. "I want to see you again. Really see you." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." In the weeks that followed, they met in secret corners of the city library basements, quiet parks, tiny cafes tucked between alleys. Julian didn't tell her everything. Not yet. Only that he came from power, that he was hiding, that he was tired of pretending. Maya told him about Sierra, about the betrayal, about the night that had stolen everything and returned something she hadn't expected. Trust, something growing. They didn't define it, but something lived between them. Some nights, they sat in silence, their arms brushing but never moving apart. Other nights, Julian looked at her like she was light in a world full of shadows. One night, Maya reached for his hand and didn't let go. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. "I'm afraid of how safe you make me feel." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'm afraid of who I'd be if I lost you." And something inside them shifted. The truth comes for them. 3 weeks after they reunited, the world caught up. Julian sat across the loft, typing feverishly on his laptop. Maya watched him from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, tea in her hands. "You have to go public, don't you?" she asked. He nodded. "My uncle's trying to take everything. If I don't show up at the next board meeting, he wins by default. And if you do, I walk into a room full of enemies." She stared at her tea. "They'll come for you. For us. They already are," he said. Julian sat beside her, still quiet. "The night I met you, I wasn't just collapsing from the drugs. I was collapsing from everything. You saved me." She looked at him. "You saved me too." He reached for her hand. "So we fight this together." And Meyer nodded, because even though fear still whispered, hope now spoke louder. The plan was clear, dangerous, risky, public, but it was the only way. Julian would return to the company that had tried to erase him. He would face his Uncle Gregory at the Ward Tech Board meeting, armed with documents, recordings, and his truth. Maya stood by him, not in the shadows, but in the light, exactly where she belonged. They were no longer running. Now, they were fighting back. The estate of ghosts. The night before the meeting, Julian brought Maya to his childhood home. It was nothing like she had imagined. An estate that could fit 3 of her childhood homes inside. All glass walls and sharp angles, towering ceilings, and stone floors that echoed with memories neither warm nor kind. This was never home, he said as she stepped through the marble foyer. Just a prison with very expensive furniture. They walked through the quiet hall. She stepped slow, his shoulders heavier than usual. In the library, he poured them each a glass of wine. Maya stared at the polished oak shelves, the antique globe in the corner, the grand piano collecting dust. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Julian didn't hesitate. "Because I want you to see where I came from, so you'll understand why I chose to walk away." Maya turned to him, her voice soft but steady. "Then why go back now?" His eyes found hers, steady, warm. "Because now I have something worth protecting, a new kind of intimacy." That night, everything changed. There was no desperation this time, no chaos, no pain, just clarity. They didn't rush. They didn't speak. They let their bodies do the talking, slow, reverent, intentional. Every kiss was a promise, every touch a vow. They moved together not to forget the past, but to rewrite its meaning. Maya had never felt so seen, so chosen, so free. And when they lay tangled by the fireplace, breath slowing in unison, she rested her head on his chest and whispered, "Whatever happens tomorrow, don't let them take who you are." "I won't," he said. "Not again." The boardroom battle. The next morning, they arrived at Ward Tech headquarters. The lobby was cold and chrome, filled with silent stares and whispered speculation. But Julian walked with purpose, dressed in black, sharp as a blade. Maya walked beside him, head high, her presence quiet but powerful. When the double doors opened, a room full of board members turned, and at the head of the table sat Gregory Blackwell, smiling. "So the prodigal nephew returns," Gregory said, voice oily with false warmth. Julian didn't flinch. Instead, he placed a folder on the table and began to speak. Emails, financial reports, audio recordings, whistleblower accounts, proof of Gregory's embezzlement, his manipulation, his attempt to destroy Julian with fabricated scandal. And then Julian did the unthinkable. He told them about the party, about being drugged, about waking up in a hotel room beside a stranger who saved him when no one else would. He didn't say Maya's name. He didn't need to. She sat beside him, serene and unshaken, her silence more powerful than any speech. "I was almost destroyed by someone I trusted," Julian said, "but I was saved by someone I didn't even know. She reminded me that power doesn't come from fear. It comes from purpose." The room was still. Then, one by one, heads nodded, votes cast, the decision unanimous. Julian Blackwell was reinstated as CEO. Gregory Blackwell was removed, escorted out by security, his face a mask of disbelief. Julian turned to Maya. "It's done," he whispered. She smiled. "Now what?" "Now we start living a love in the open." That evening, they returned to the loft. Julian lit candles. Maya brewed tea. They danced in the kitchen, barefoot, to music only they could hear. "You didn't just save me that night," Julian said, looking into her eyes. "You gave me a reason to keep going." Maya placed her hands on his chest. "I didn't think I'd ever feel safe again." "You are," he whispered. "With me, you always will be." And in that moment, the world felt far away. For once, their love wasn't a secret. It wasn't a shadow behind closed doors. It was real. It was theirs. A storm brewing. The peace didn't last long. One rainy afternoon, Maya returned to the loft to find Julian pacing, phone in hand, tension etched across his jaw. He ended the call and looked at her. "My uncle," he said, voice tight. "He's suing me for defamation, and he's going after anyone who helped me, including you." Maya's heart dropped. "But I didn't." "He doesn't care. It's not about truth. It's revenge." He hesitated, "And it gets worse." He leaked the hotel footage. Her breath caught. What footage? Just the hallway. You and me, entering the room together. It's everywhere. Online. Social media. News. Maya sat down slowly. The walls spun. She already knew what people were saying. It didn't matter that it wasn't true. The world believed what it wanted to believe. A billionaire. A mystery girl. A hotel scandal. Do we hide again? She asked, voice small. Julian dropped to his knees in front of her, his hands on hers. No, we don't hide. Not this time. He took a breath. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Maya nodded. Do you want this life with me? He asked. With the noise, the cameras, the headlines, people who will never believe our story. She looked at him, really looked, at the man who held her when she was broken, at the man who made space for her to heal. Yes, she said, I want this life, with you, taking back the narrative. The press conference was scheduled 3 days later. The room overflowed with reporters, cameras flashing, microphones poised. Julian spoke first, calm, clear, commanding. Then he turned to Meyer. She stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. A few months ago, she began. I was just a student. I had a quiet life. I stayed out of the way because I thought that made me safe. She looked out across the room, but someone I trusted tried to destroy me, and I ended up in a hotel hallway, drugged and terrified. She paused, and I ran into him, a stranger, another person trying to survive. The room held its breath. That night could have ruined both of us, but it didn't. It gave us something real. I didn't seduce him. He didn't save me. We saved each other. Cameras clicked. Shouts rang out. But she had already said what mattered, and she meant every word. A moment of peace. Back at the loft, the noise faded. Julian cooked dinner. Maya sat on the counter, barefoot, laughing when he burned the garlic. Later, wrapped in soft sheets, he looked at her with something that had no words. I love you, he said. Meyer didn't hesitate. I love you too. And for the first time, it wasn't survival. It was something bigger, something brighter, something true. The next day unfolded in sunlight and stillness. Maya had just made tea. The loft was quiet, safe, but safety is a fragile thing, because ghosts, especially the ones you thought you'd buried, always know how to find the door. And that morning, one knocked, the uninvited guest. The elevator dinged. Maya stepped into the lobby to find a woman already inside. Sunglasses, designer coat, a smirk that Meyer would have known anywhere. Sierra Vaughn, you really landed on your feet. Ha, Sierra said, stepping in like she owned the place. Maya froze. Her mug slipped from her fingers and shattered. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice low. Sierra removed her sunglasses and smiled. Icy and sharp. Closure. Maya backed up a step. You don't get to come here. Oh, come on, Meyer. Don't act like you didn't want this. You played the victim beautifully. Maya's fists curled. You tried to ruin me, she said. I succeeded, Sierra replied. The threat. Sierra looked around the lobby, unimpressed. Look at you, penthouse view, billionaire boyfriend, a press conference that made you into some tragic heroine. It's cute. Maya held her ground. Say what you came to say. Sierra leaned in, voice venom soft. I want something, money, enough to disappear, or I go public with what really happened. You mean your confession? Maya snapped. That you drugged me, set me up. There's no proof, Sierra said coolly. Just your word against mine. But then, another voice cut through the room. You sure about that, Julian? He stood at the edge of the lobby, calm but lethal, holding up his phone. Because I've got a recording. Sierra's eyes widened. You're bluffing, she spat. Julian didn't move. Try me. Sierra hesitated. Her forehead cracked. Then she turned and fled, heels clicking like gunshots on the tile floor. After the storm, Maya stood trembling. Julian crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. You okay? She nodded against his chest. He held her tighter. She's not your story anymore, he whispered. We are. And in that moment, Maya believed him. Completely. 1 year later, the city moved the way it always did, fast, loud, unbothered. But inside a sunlit gallery on the corner of Mercer and Grand, everything stood still. White walls, framed sketches, soft light pouring through tall windows, and in the center stood Maya Ellis. She didn't need to speak. Her name was etched in gold on the glass door. Her work lined the walls, but none of it compared to the feeling she got when she turned and saw him. Julian, dark suit, no tie, hands in pockets, smile slow and proud. He walked toward her, each step echoing the memory of a hallway they once escaped down together. You really did it, he said softly. We did it, she corrected. And for a moment, she saw the girl she used to be the one who trembled in a stranger's hotel room, hoping for something she couldn't name. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman, strong, steady, loved. The chain comes back. After the media storm, after Julian reclaimed Ward Tech and Maya reclaimed her life, they rebelled together. Julian changed the company from within, focusing on ethics, community, and innovation. He refused to become what his uncle had been. Maya returned to school, graduated early, opened her gallery. They chose each other every day. But that evening, as the gallery buzzed with guests and friends, Julian reached into his pocket. A small, black velvet box. Maya blinked. He opened it. Inside, her silver chain, the one she had left behind that night. But now something new dangled beside it. A ring, simple, elegant, a diamond nestled above a charm etched with tiny engraved letters. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. You once gave this to a stranger, Julian said. Now I want to give it back to the woman I love. Maya's breath caught. Not because I owe you, but because I choose you. Every day, for the rest of our lives. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded, speechless. He stepped forward and clasped the chain around her neck. Will you marry me? He whispered. Yes, she breathed. Of course, eyes. The applause rose like a wave from the crowd around them. But to Maya, it felt like silence, like peace, rooftop reflections. That night, under a sky strewn with stars, Maya stood on the rooftop beside Julian, their hands intertwined. You know, she said quietly, if that night had gone the way they planned, I wouldn't be here. Julian finished. The knock came just after noon. Maya wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door slowly and froze. Sierra Vaughn stood in the hallway of the loft, wrapped in a sleek black trench coat. Sunglasses pushed into her hair. The same smirk from that party night curved her lips, sharp and unapologetic. You really landed on your feet, didn't you? She said, sauntering in like she owned the place. Maya's throat tightened. What do you want? Sierra shrugged. Closure or cash, either works. You think he picked you because of love, she sneered. Please, it's pity. He felt bad for you because of what I did. Maya's fists clenched. You tried to ruin me. Sierra smiled wider. I succeeded, but now I want something in return. Money, enough to disappear quietly. And if I say no, then I go public with what really happened, with everything, all your secrets. You mean your confession that you drugged me, set me up? Sierra's voice turned cold. There's no proof, just your word against mine. At that moment, the elevator dinged behind them. Julian stepped out, reading the tension in the room in one glance. Let's make it public, then, he said, calm but deadly. He held up his phone, recording every word. Sierra paled. You're bluffing. Try me. She turned on her heel, heels clicking like gunshots against the tile, and fled without another word. Julian locked the door. His eyes found Maya's. Are you okay? She nodded slowly, her hands still trembling. You're not her story anymore, he whispered. We are. And in that moment, she believed him fully. The choice to heal. The pain didn't disappear overnight. The scars didn't vanish with one confrontation, but the shame, the silence, they began to loosen their grip. Maya stopped hiding. She returned to class, faced her professors, her peers, her whispers, and walked through them all like someone who had nothing left to fear, because she had already survived the worst and come out on the other side. Julian, too, was changing. No longer just a man with a title or a legacy, was a man with purpose. Together, they rebuilt, day by day, moment by moment. 1 year later, New York moved fast, as always. But inside the sunlit gallery at the corner of Mercer and Grand, time slowed. Maya stood at the center of the space, surrounded by white walls and her framed sketches. Her name was on the glass door. Her work in time it, bold, quiet lined the walls. But none of that compared to what she felt when she saw him walk in. Julian, in a dark suit, no tie, hands in his pockets, that proud smile tugging at his lips. "You really did it," he said softly. "We really did it," she corrected. She remembered who she used to be, girl stumbling in hallways and sure of her worth. She wasn't that girl anymore. She was strong, steady, loved. A gift returned. Julian stepped forward and reached into his pocket. A small black box. Maya's breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside lay the silver chain she had left behind in that hotel room, one she thought was lost forever. But now, there was something new added to it. A ring. Simple, elegant, a small diamond glinting above an engraved charm. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. "You once gave this to a stranger," he said. "Now I want to give it back to the woman I love. Not because I owe you, but because I choose you every day for the rest of our lives." Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. He fastened the chain gently round her neck. "Will you marry me?" he whispered. "Yes," she breathed. "Of course." Later that night, long after the gallery had emptied, they stood together on the rooftop, the city glittering below them. They didn't speak at first, just held hands, just breathed. "You know," Meyer said finally, voice quiet, "if that night had gone the way they planned, I wouldn't be standing here." Julian nodded. "Me neither." She looked up at him, smiling softly. "I think we were meant to fall into each other." "Fall," he repeated, then kissed her temple, "and rise again." Because their story wasn't one of scandal, or tragedy, or survival. It was a story of choice, of healing, of two broken people who refused to stay broken. And in that quiet moment surrounded by stars, memory, and love, they weren't victims anymore. They were partners, survivors, soulmates. Epilogue. The legacy they built. In the months that followed, Julian turned Ward Tech into a global symbol of ethics and innovation. Maya's gallery gained national attention for her emotionally resonant designs. Together, they began a foundation to support victims of abuse, creating safe space, literal and emotional, for those who felt lost. They still danced in kitchens, still drank burnt coffee on sleepy mornings, still laughed at nothing and everything. And every morning, Maya touched the silver chain round her neck ring resting against her collarbone and remembered the night that changed everything. Not because it broke her, but because it made her whole. With him, 1 year after the gallery opening, the world had changed. Not the world outside of one that still moved too fast, shouted too loud, judged too quickly, but their world, the quiet one they had built inside the eye of the storm. And within that world, Meyer and Julian Blackwell had found something few people ever do. Peace, a home, not a fortress. Their new home wasn't the penthouse. It wasn't the estate with the glass walls and cold hallways. It was a townhouse in a quiet West Village street, ivy climbing the brick, lights spilling across hardwood floors, windows that opened wide in the summer. Every corner held something of them. Maya's sketches were framed in the hole, not just the polished gallery pieces, but the raw ones, the messy ones, the ones she drew in the middle of the night when she was scared or inspired or just couldn't sleep. Julian's books lined the shelves, not business manuals or CEO biographies, but poetry, essays, science fiction, stories about building and surviving and dreaming. They planted herbs in a window box, burned pancakes every Sunday, argued about which color to paint the bedroom walls. They ended up choosing both. There was no perfection, only presence, love in the little things. Their days were stitched together not with grand gestures, but with the small, steady rhythm of commitment. Meyer woke first most mornings. She'd brew tea, curl up on the couch with a blanket, and sketch while the city stretched its bones outside. Julian would find her there, half awake, pencil smudges on her cheek, and kiss her like it was the first time. Sometimes they worked together in the same room, not speaking for hours, just existing, breathing, creating side by side. Sometimes they danced in the kitchen with the radio too loud, knocking over spice jars and laughing like kids. They didn't pretend the past had vanished, but they had stopped letting it define them. The letters they never sent. There was a drawer in Julian's study, a plain one, locked with a small key Meyer kept on her chain. Inside were letters, dozens of them, some written by Julian to his younger self before the collapse, before the trap, before her. Some written by Meyer to the girl who stood in that hotel hallway, dizzy and terrified, not knowing her whole life was about to change. They read them together sometimes. They cried, but mostly they were quiet, because some truths don't need to be spoken, just honored. The foundation of light. Together, they launched the Ellis Blackwell Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to creating safe housing and creative programs for at-risk youth and survivors of abuse. Meyer oversaw the design of each space. No fluorescent lights, no cold tiles, just warmth, soft chairs, painted walls, studio corners for art, shelves full of journals, music rooms with soundproof windows. Beauty is safety, she often said. Safety is healing. Julian handled the funding, the strategy, the partnerships. He used his influence not to game but to protect. They didn't use their story as a marketing pitch, but they didn't hide it either. When asked, Maya would say, "We were both broken, but someone believed in us before we believed in ourselves. We want to do the same for others." A new chapter. On a crisp autumn morning, Meyer stood by the window holding a small white test in her shaking hand. 2 lines. She stared for a long time. Then she turned toward the bedroom. Julian was still in bed, hair a mess, one arm draped over the pillows. She sat beside him and whispered, "Julian?" He stirred. She placed the test in his palm. It took him a second to register. Then his eyes shot open. "You're..." She nodded. He blinked, then laughed, then cried, then pulled her into him like he never wanted to let go. They stayed like that for hours. The city outside forgotten. The soft future. The nursery wasn't a pastel kingdom. It was quiet, minimal, filled with sunlight and soft textures. A rocking chair Julian built himself. Drawings Maya framed from her earliest sketchbooks. A mobile that played a soft melody from the song she once hummed to herself the night they met. They didn't know what kind of parents they'd be. They only knew they'd love louder than the world could ever shout. The final sketch. Years later, Maya sat alone on the rooftop of their townhouse, sketchbook balanced on her knee. The skyline shimmered. A toddler's laughter drifted up from the floor below. Julian's voice followed. "Come here, little troublemaker." Maya smiled. Her pencil moved in slow, deliberate lines. She wasn't drawing a building, not a room, not even a person. She was sketching a memory, a hallway, a stranger, a chain, a beginning, and underneath it, she wrote one word in soft graphite: home.